Hi everyone, welcome to our new series, Brown Brilliance, created to celebrate International Women's Day this year. We'll be speaking to some amazing women, discussing their stories, struggles, and their successes, and how they are inspiring other brown women on this journey. So today we'll be speaking to Shweta Aggarwal. She's an author, a speaker, and she's doing an amazing job at fighting colorism from the inside out. So let me just add her on.
Hi Baljinder, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for coming on, taking some time out to do this with us today. And I suppose we can jump straight into the questions. So the first question that I wanted to ask you is, what motivated you to begin this fight with colorism, to write your memoirs? Where did it begin? What made you want to do this?
So firstly, let me thank you for having me on your platform. I'm a huge fan, as you know, of your
thank you.
journey, your products, and what you're doing for like brown skin, and brown women. So thank you for doing what you're doing. With regards to my journey, I think it's one of those things that, you want to fight from a very young age because you know that it doesn't feel right inside, right? And even a child can kind of understand that if you're being shamed for your color, there's something not right about it. But because it's so normalized, you just kind of give in and you keep going and you keep going. And, you've got this thing in your head where you're like wanting to fight, but then also you succumb because it's so normalized that it's just everywhere. So it took me about 45 years to get here to start fighting it. That's how old I am. Well. I really, really got into penning my memoir because of an awakening that I had back in 2020 after George Floyd's murder and the Black Lives Matter movement, which became a global thing, right? Unfortunately, it wasn't just something that a lot of people in the States felt disgusted by. It became like a global issue, a global movement, rightly so. And I remember going to a protest myself right at the end of June in a local park. I think it was one of the last protests happening. And I was very, very keen to go. And I got my kids to like make these banners and posters, Black Lives Matter and all that.
Yeah.
And we were there in the park and, kind of like very, very passionate about fighting racism and helping the Black community. And I remember standing there talking to a Black man at the end of it all and commending him for, sharing his stories and being so brave. And all the while I was like trying to fix my red cap because I didn't want to catch the sun and I didn't want to tan. And the penny dropped that moment for me because I was there standing talking to a Black man about racism. And I was standing there being one of like, the victims of colorism, but also that moment is when I realized that I'm not a victim anymore. I've become a perpetrator. Because I want to protect my color and I don't have the right to be here. If I can't fight colorism, I should not be here fighting racism because they're so closely linked, right?
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, walked back home, hanging my head down in shame and guilt, and just started processing it and thinking about it. Days of sleepless nights. And I remember kind of just walking to a park bench, again, the same park actually, and started to write my prologue. And it wasn't even like a prologue, it was more like a diary entry.
Yeah.
And I came back and, shared it with my husband and he read it and, bless him, he's very, very supportive, but he always has his ifs and buts. This time around, there were no ifs and buts. He was blown away by it. And he said, you have to write more. And so I just started writing more. And as I started writing more, I started basically like writing it as a story, as a novel, as opposed to a diary entry, like a journal.
Yeah.
So that I can share with other people and they can benefit from my awakening. So that's how it all kind of came about.
It's brilliant that something you were feeling inside, you've been able to kind of work on that, figure out what it is, and then have it to create this. It's amazing. This is the book. I haven't been able to get all the way through it yet, but the bits that I have read, really moving, I have to say. They're really quite emotive. There's one thing that particularly caught my eye when I was reading through the book, and it was that colorism is the cousin of racism. That was really like, wow, when you stop to think about it, it's how true is that?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, it all boils down to the color of your skin, right? Even racism boils down to the color of your skin. And, when you look at it, in terms of their grandparent, their common grandparent, it's white supremacy and white skin privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is definitely a very close link. I mean, you can say siblings, you can say color, cousins, whichever way you look at it, there is a very, very close link. So I just thought actually that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and the thing with colorism is it's so deeply ingrained that I suppose you could even say you don't even realize it's happening at times. I mean, one example that I have from my own life is when I was pregnant, I think, with my eldest child. I remember being told by one of my relatives not to drink tea because it might affect the color of his skin.
Yeah.
And it was only years later that I thought that is just unbelievable, really.
Yeah.
To even say that to somebody.
I know. Yeah. Not to drink tea, not to drink coffee, not to drink Coke, and to have milk with saffron every day.
Really? To make them lighter.
Exactly. Yeah. That's like a standard thing for pregnant
Right.
women in India, milk with saffron to have a light-skinned baby. The foods to eat, things to avoid, all of that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So like, it's, as you said, it's so deeply ingrained. It begins essentially from a woman being pregnant, right? And being told what to eat, what not to eat. And then that's it. First thing that's discussed when a baby is born is the baby's color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I suppose by highlighting this and writing out, your memoirs, it does, relate and relay that it's something that just shouldn't be happening, let alone being accepted and even agreed with more often than not.
Well, that's exactly it. It's funny you say that because when you basically like try and educate aunties or people from the previous generation and all that this is wrong, you shouldn't be saying things like this, you shouldn't be giving us advice on how to be fairer and all that, they don't actually think there's anything wrong with it. They say we're trying to help you.
This is the thing I was thinking. They don't see it as a harmful thing. They actually think that by giving you advice to have a lighter child, they're helping your child be more successful and more accepted in life. They don't actually see the damage that is happening in the process of them doing that. Yeah.
Which also is, it's a catch-22 because, as you just said, like they think that they're helping you be more successful in life, right? Sadly and ironically, that is the problem. That is so obvious in our Indian society, South Asian society and community, and whether it's the South Asian diaspora around the world or it's the South Asians within South Asia itself. Unfortunately, that is the way it goes. That if you're lighter skinned, you are considered more successful. The perceptions are that you're more successful. People perceive you to be more successful. You are more beautiful. You are more. You're probably from a richer background. You're wealthier. So like. They are essentially in their eyes, they're helping us, quote unquote, because that's what they see as giving you a better life, right? Because it's exactly what happens in South Asia.
Yeah.
So that is where we need to change. It is literally a catch-22 because we need to change the mindsets to then change the perceptions. How do you change the perceptions without changing the mindsets?
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's very, very much a catch-22. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just going back to your book quickly, you speak about your journey with this and how you feel it's affected your life and how much of a negative impact it's had on you. So I suppose the next thing I would really want to talk to you about is, do you feel that you've ever needed to modify your behavior or your appearance in like a predominantly non-brown culture or environment? And how did you cope with that?
So it's really interesting you ask this question because the short answer is no, I haven't. And that's what's most ironic, that when I came to the UK is when I felt accepted for the first time, because I didn't see myself the way English people saw me. They saw me as like, oh my God, your color is gorgeous and we love your hair. And, whereas it's the exact opposite of what I experienced in India. Every time I would land in India, the first thing people would say is, oh, what happened to you? Turned so kali. Like they'd use the word kali, like dark,
Yeah.
Or on a Skype call after a holiday or something or the other, like that. Aunties won't even say, hello, beta, how are you? They would say, oh, what happened to you?
Yeah. Have you been on holiday?
Right, exactly. Whereas you would get the opposite over here in the UK. You get compliments.
Yeah.
Now they are seeing them as compliments. What I've also learned through my journey is that we shouldn't take them as compliments. We should just accept ourselves the way we are, right? Like, oh, you've tanned and, we wish we could have your color.
Yeah,
That's
that's not
not
okay. That's not okay.
exactly right. That's not a compliment, because
Mm,
they will never understand what privileges they have as a white person.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for them, it's just a temporary thing to beautify them.
Yeah.
For us, it's literally it's our life, right?
Mm, mm.
We have to live through colorism day in and day out. So we wish we had your color is a microaggression, actually. It's not a compliment. But of course, back then, because I had such a complex about my color, with everything that happened in my life, that I started taking them as compliments. And so, you know, I didn't have to modify anything at all. Like, it was the one place where I felt like, externally and internally, I have to say, when I landed in the UK, it was the one place where I felt like I could just be. I didn't feel like I
That's
was
really
in a
nice to hear.
straight
Yeah.
jacket. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's unexpected. I thought that you'd probably feel the opposite, maybe, considering, but when you think about how colorism works, it is going to be more within the community itself, the Indian
Yeah.
community, let's say, that you will
Yeah.
get those comments.
Yeah, absolutely. That, yeah, definitely did. The South Asians, like, they didn't change. They were the same, right? They carry colorism with them wherever they go, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in Japan, there are very narrow beauty standards there as well. So as you can imagine, with my skin tone and my hair, because they usually have dead straight hair as well,
Yeah.
I stood out like a sore thumb. Yeah. So I experienced stares, indiscreet stares, and
Right.
racism in Japan. Whereas here, I think because of the diversity, and maybe it's just a London thing, I don't know, but because London is so diverse, you see women of all shapes and bodies and sizes and hair textures and skin color and everything. So I didn't feel like I didn't fit in. I actually felt like I fit here.
That's nice. That's really nice to hear. So how do you now celebrate your color, let's say, and how do you use your platform for to promote diversity, equality, and inclusion for brown women?
So one of the things that I have really been focusing on once my anger passed, to begin with, I was like calling out all the aunties and saying, look at this horrific comments they make, and this is what they're saying, and blah, 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 blah. And then along the way, I started educating myself. And of course, after, like writing everything down in the form of a book, I think that was my therapy, right? The kind of cathartic side of it had been accomplished. And I started to realize that actually there's only one way to fight colorism, and there's only one way to celebrate all of us, is to firstly empathize with everybody's experiences. Nobody's different. You can be lighter skinned, but if you're the darkest person in the room, you may have experienced colorism, right? So that doesn't mean that I have the right to invalidate their experiences just because they're lighter than me.
Yeah.
And likewise, somebody who's darker than me doesn't have the authority to invalidate my experiences.
Yeah, and experience can't be wrong, right?
Exactly, right? So when I started writing, when I started posting things on my platform, one of the first things that was said to me, and till date that is repeatedly said to me, is, but you're not even that dark. And I'm like, put yourself in my shoes when you have really fair-skinned parents that, and everything that I've been through. And I used to kind of validate it. And I started to realize there's no need for me to do that. And I am just going to speak my truth, and I'm going to use my platform to allow other people to speak their truth, and other brown women and black women, women of color, essentially.
Yeah.
Even East Asian women who are now, who've read the book and are coming back to me with amazing feedback from Japan to the Philippines. Women of color, to be able to celebrate their color, to be able to share their stories without any inhibitions, without feeling that kind of, nervousness around being invalidated.
Yeah.
Because colorism is something that there's a very dark side to colorism as well, and it's unfortunate. It is really unfortunate. We have casteism and classism in India that is rife, really, really rife. And it's disgusting. It's shameful how people from the lower caste are treated. People from very, poor backgrounds are treated. I can't possibly speak for them. Hands up. I put my hands up on that. Like, I can't speak for you because
Yeah.
I've never experienced that, but I can empathize and I can help, join the fight.
Yeah.
I can join the fight and help in any way that I can. But I have also had backlash where people have come onto my page and they've said, oh, I'm only going to listen to somebody who talks about casteism and classism. All the other people make room or like leave the room or something like that. And I'm just thinking, that doesn't make any sense, because I hope you realize I'm on your side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think one of the key ways that I like to celebrate other women, and I feel very proud that my platform allows women to do that, is to share their experiences without any inhibitions of or fear of being judged, and to leave. I know that colorism is very closely linked to classism and casteism. I know you can't separate the two, but what I'm trying to do is just park that on the side for a short while. Let's just allow people to talk about their experiences. If, say, somebody who's lighter than me has started talking to me about their experiences, instead of invalidating them, what I say is, I'm really sorry that you went through this. And before you know it, I've converted them, quote unquote. You know what I mean? They've started to empathize.
Yeah, you've given them the space to say what they need to say or feel what they need to feel.
That's it. Allow them to feel what they feel. And after that, for them to also realize, oh my God, I didn't realize that there is a whole different, quote unquote, darker side to colorism, i.e. casteism and classism. I'd like to learn more. Can you tell me more? I'm really sorry. I actually now understand my privilege as a relatively light-skinned person, and that there are much worse experiences. So once you've empathized, I think people then become more broad-minded and open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas they realize that colorism doesn't invalidate casteism. They actually, like you said, go hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if you invalidate them to begin with, this is my personal view, that's it. Like, they've just closed their mind completely, right? And off they go. They're gone.
Yeah.
They're not going to ever join the fight. So I think that is one way where I really believe in fighting colorism with kindness, compassion, and empathy.
Yeah.
And I feel that, because we're doing that, and because I'm celebrating myself and my color, not validating my experiences, other women are starting to do the same, and we're all celebrating together, and it's become a platform where anybody can share anything they feel.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of answers my next question to some degree, really. But I was just going to ask you, what advice would you give to other young brown or women of color who might be feeling discouraged or marginalized by colorism?
So what I would suggest to begin with, firstly, is if you have been experiencing colorism, and it's probably something that you've been experiencing from a very young age, it doesn't just happen, one not so fine day when you're 25, right?
Yeah, no.
It happens slowly and gradually. You've probably been hearing comments from the day you were born, which means that then, therefore, it's so deeply ingrained that it's going to take a while for you to fight it and to actually find the courage to fight it. So the first thing I always say to people is, don't give yourself a hard time. Take it easy. It's something that is almost, it's innate behavior. Yeah. So you are going to feel that you're inadequate. You are going to feel that, you're less than and you're not beautiful. You are going to want to reach for those creams if you are using those creams, which I did. And it was an addiction, it becomes an addiction. It became like a standard product in my shopping basket, shampoo, toothbrush, toothpaste, skin whitening cream. And it takes a while to change that mindset and to kind of become clean rather.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one thing I definitely always say to people: don't give yourself a hard time. It is a journey. It'll take a while. And so don't expect for you to like just go, I'm over it, colorism, what colorism? Yeah. Secondly, I would advise on talking to like a confidant, somebody who you can share your experiences with, whether it's a social media platform or it's, a close friend who will listen to you without, again, judging you. Or it's even an aunt, we all have hopefully one person who's actually modern enough in our families to listen to us. Yeah, reading books. the thing about colorism, and this is really ironic, right? Every single woman of color has experienced colorism, and I can confidently say this, at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yet nobody talks about it, and it's a very lonely journey.
That's the thing. This is one thing I realized in the process of us carrying out this interview, is that racism, you know, I mean, rightly so as well, everybody talks about it. It's you know, it dominates. Everybody, you know, tries their utmost to understand it and figure out how they can rectify it and so forth. But with colorism, it's just literally not spoken about. There's hardly anything you can come across
Yes.
that goes into the detail of how it makes people feel, how it's, you know, paving the way for future generations and even elder generations. I was so interested in one of the reels that you did with your mother, and what she thought at the beginning of your journey and what she did at the end of your journey was like, you know, there's hope for everyone. It's not just about making it for, like I said, for future generations.
No, exactly. And that was going to be my next point.
Right.
Don't lose hope. You know,
Yeah.
you can change mindsets of your aunties and your mums, etc. Don't lose hope, because it's just a question of educating them and persevering and explaining to them, as you just said, how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And I think finally, thank goodness, even our parents' generation are now starting to understand the importance of mental health.
Yeah. True.
Right? Because that was something that South Asians never dealt with. Mental health, like
Never.
what mental health? What do you mean you're
Exactly.
mentally ill? Like, you know,
Yeah, it's just like, stop it, don't do that.
yeah, exactly. Like next, you know. Yeah. But now they're getting it, right? They're getting it.
Yeah.
And they are probably going through mental health issues themselves because of the oppression and the patriarchy and everything that
So
they've
much to
been
unpack
through.
there. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I've definitely found that they're becoming a lot more open to these conversations. And so, yeah, definitely don't lose hope, because there is a chance that if you persevere and you educate them, that they will understand, you know. And my mum now, she's my biggest champion. She's like asking me on a daily basis, like, how's it going?
Oh,
What's the next thing? And how many books have you sold? And
yeah.
you know, oh, have you sent it to that person that you were talking about? You know? So yeah, definitely don't lose hope. And then the last thing I would say is, start to you know, wear that favorite color of yours that you kind of tucked away in your wardrobe because you were told that you look too dark in it, you know, whether it's black or
Yeah.
brown or, you know, whatever, or your favorite lipstick, you know, put it on. If it makes you feel good, do it, right? Don't listen to other people. Embrace your color the way it is. Like, don't worry about getting a tan, and please do use SPF. That's a myth that we don't need it. But please do use SPF, but enjoy the sun and read up on the benefits of what sunshine does for us, you know, in terms of our mental health, right? I mean, there is a reason why South Asians have the poorest levels of vitamin D in the whole world, right? Because you're hiding from the sun.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it makes you, so you know, it makes you happy, you know, and you get endorphins. So that is something that is extremely important too. And you know, wearing the colors that you want to wear, and also your makeup. You start to use the makeup and the foundation that works on you. Don't try and, you know, use that one shade lighter because you want to look lighter and it's not really you. You can see it in the mirror. It's not you. So I use mixed foundations now. I haven't found the right shade for myself. So I actually bought 2 different shades of foundation and I mix them. And when I put them on, it is literally like my exact shade.
So it enhances rather than trying to make you lighter, or
that's it. Yeah. It's like literally, you couldn't even tell if I, you know, did a little, you know, patch on my cheek, and you wouldn't be able to tell. Like, it's that close to my color. And when I look in the mirror, it's me. I recognize myself, you know, and there's something really empowering in that.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. Can see that. So that leads me on very nicely to the next question. And I mean, in terms of your journey with colorism and your life in general, is there one person that stands out that you would say has inspired you on your journey?
So there are a few people actually, and in fact, I've listed them in my epilogue. So I have to say, social media is one tool that I did not feel comfortable with to begin with when I was on Instagram, you know, to begin with, like 2 years ago, versus what I do now and how I feel on it now. I was very intimidated by it.
Yeah.
And having said that, I did start following a few people and, getting inspired by their messages and their own journeys and how they're fighting colorism and these anti-colorism activists, essentially. And how they're dealing with even the backlash. Like, one of the biggest things that we're always told is, oh, there are much bigger problems in this world to fight than colorism. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say there's one called Seema Hari I follow on Instagram, and she actually fights colorism from the casteism and classism side of things.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of her. I would say Dr. Sarah Webb, who has a page called Colorism Healing.
I think I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and she is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And then after that, they're just like few other influencers who will talk about colorism, every so often and what it's done to them and share their stories and all that. They get backlash as well, saying, well, you what are you talking about? You've made it big and all of that. But I think having said all of that, one of the reasons why I started writing my book was because my daughter inspired me. And the reason how and why she inspired me is actually even before 2020, back in 2016, when we were on holiday in Thailand, she caught me red-handed.
Yeah, I read that.
You read that? Yeah.
As children do. They have a way of seeing right through into your soul, don't they?
That's it. Yeah. And she caught me buying a cream. She interrogated me straight away.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just, that look in her eyes, I just saw that look where she basically said, don't give me any BS. I want the truth. Yeah. And I felt ashamed, I was like, as parents, you want to kind of practice what you preach. You want to lead by example, right? But here she caught me like living the biggest lie of my life, essentially.
That must have been hard.
It was really hard, really, really hard. And between 2016 and 2020, just kind of getting caught up with life and work, was working full time. Every so often during my train journey, when you're kind of alone in your own thoughts, I would think about my conversation, with her back in 2016. And I'd literally go back to that scene and how it would make me feel. And I wanted to write, but it was just a question of like time. There was no time to write,
Yeah, it's always
when
a
you
thing.
have 2 young kids and a full-time job. So she was definitely one of the biggest inspirations. And she's actually my first beta reader of my entire book as well.
Oh, that's...
Chapter by chapter, I used to ask her, what do you think? What do you think?
So when you spoke to her about it, I haven't got past that bit in the book. Did you just kind of speak to her openly and tell her everything you went through, everything you experienced? Because I'm sure, as her being your daughter, you would have made sure that she doesn't feel the same things that you were feeling when you were growing up through those same years.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the point where I realized that I have to share the truth, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, filter anything. It has to be said exactly what happened and exactly how I felt. So if you haven't actually come to that part yet, then that's how the story unfolds.
Right. Okay. Okay, good.
Because I walk her through my entire life by the sunbeds in Thailand on
right.
By the pool. So that's exactly how it unfolds, because I share my entire story with her, which is why I kept reflecting on it between 2016 and 2020. It had kind of started to come alive in my head.
Right.
And every so often I would want to write it down. And I think I was just kind of suppressing it, because with childhood trauma in particular, and the very, very, very harsh days as such that I've been through in the traumatic days, you just want to lock it up, right?
It's painful.
The classic South Asian thing, right?
Yeah.
Mental health, what mental health? You don't want to deal with it. Lock it up, throw it away.
Yeah, leave it alone. Yeah.
And that's what I was doing in those 4 years. Every time I would have this kind of flashback, I would just go, oh, no, just, just ignore it. You have a lovely life. You have a wonderful life. Just ignore it. Throw it away. But then 2020, I couldn't throw it away. I had to basically revisit that. And I knew that if I don't, that it will bother me for the rest of my life. And there's a lot of healing to be done.
That's quite a journey. I mean, the healing in itself, we all know it can take so much time and patience, and it's painful. And then to be able to speak about that with your children and to be brave enough to do that so openly is really brave. It's quite a thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, as a successful brown woman, what message would you like to send to other brown women about, I mean, if they're facing similar challenges and obstacles, colorism aside, I suppose this question is mainly.
I think it's again one of those like questions where the answer is very, very obvious, right? We all talk about this on a regular basis, but it's still not said enough. Which is to just be, to allow yourself to just be, to live unapologetically, to not worry about what will people think. And like even my book, I know is gonna spark a lot of issues with regards to my extended family,
right?
And even my mom doesn't know the amount of details that have been included in the book.
Okay.
And this question comes up very often, like, oh, what is your extended family, specific characters who you've written about, what do they think? And I just told them, I said, well, I don't care what they think, because this is what happened, and this is how I was made to feel. So if they want to write their own book, they're more than welcome to do so.
They can include you in it, right?
Exactly. But I don't care, because I've come to a point now where this is my message to other people, and I want to share my message unfiltered, unsugar-coated, and unapologetically. And I think there's something that is really empowering in that, when brown women start to come together and live their lives together unapologetically.
Without fear of what's going to be said about them.
Exactly.
I mean, the ultimate truth is, regardless of what you do or don't do, something will be said about you. So, you have to just be yourself, like you said, unapologetically, and just do what it is that you want to do.
And also, I think like there are people who will champion you, who will be your, like your pillars of strength, and get the positive energy from them. Don't worry about the negative energy. So I got a lot of positive energy, obviously, from my friends and my close, circle of my kind of support network. But also, like, when you start to share your story, or like whether it's a story or a business that you're building, even a business has a story, right? There's a purpose to a business, usually, right? So when you start to share that with people, like on social media, for example, the amount of empathy that you receive from other people going, oh, wow, this resonated with me and I get it and I've been through this, that is comforting and empowering. As sad as it is to know that, for example, my story of colorism is not just my story. As I've said in the strapline of my book, a story of colorism silently lived by millions. I found something quite comforting and empowering in that yes, there will always be people who will talk negatively or discourage you from doing something, but I have to focus on those who are living these experiences now and today, so that I can help them heal. And that purpose and that objective is something that kept me going, and that all the fears kind of vanished. So I think if you focus on your purpose and objective, then that's something that will keep you going, and all other fears for you will vanish. That's how I at least I have experienced things. No,
that's brilliant. It's really good. It's been really eye-opening speaking to you about this. Not just you and your successes. I mean, that's brilliant in hearing about it in itself. But colorism too, it's just like we said earlier, it's just something that is not touched upon at all in most areas or fields. So it's been really good to understand that better, and for you to share your story. And I hope it helps others out there. I know just hearing about it has helped me to understand certain things, that have happened, and how wrong it actually is for even those little comments to come out over periods of time. But like I said, I mean, it's a super brave thing that you have been able to do, And I'm sure it's going to help loads of people that have dealt with something similar to be able to organize their thoughts and feelings and hopefully eventually deal with it as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for all the support you've been giving me, because
No
it
problem.
really helps me, especially in the, during the days where I'm feeling really low and feel like I'm just fighting a lost cause. I get support from wonderful, wonderful other brown women like you. And almost as if by magic, I'll just be feeling really low and I'll get like a DM on my Instagram saying, "You don't know what your book has done for me." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's helping, it's working."
Oh, that's nice.
So, yeah.
That's
Thank you.
one of the main points of this series. We really want to be able to speak to as many inspirational brown women as we can and just help as many as we can in the process. And if we manage to do that through this series of Brown Brilliance, then we've achieved something, and that it feels good. It's good for everyone. So thank you very much again, Shweta, and I'll speak to you soon at some point, I suppose.
Thank you so
Very
much.
much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.